Hello, hello. Kit Slice here, talking about how to leverage your stress. So my whole thing is how to turn your quote unquote liabilities into your assets. Whenever we're told like, oh, don't do that thing or don't feel this certain way, that just creates more internal drama, and that's never what we want. So today what I want to talk about is, rather than trying to get rid of your stress or like manage your stress, which can just create more stress when you're like, oh shoot, I don't know how to do that. And like, how do I get rid of my stress out? Now it's like one other to-do list thing that makes me more stressed. I want to talk about um, how to just leverage your stress. So we're not trying to get rid of it. We're just making it work for us and turning it into an asset. So just to real quick talk about what stress is. Stress is our response to a perceived threat, and it serves a function. It protects us from that threat, right? Millions and millions of years ago, our ancestors, they developed the stress response as a way to survive in that eat or be eaten world of the savannah. And so what stress did was it created that ability to flee or fight a potential threat, right? And in today's world, of course, stressors are not things like lions that we're running from. They're things that are ongoing. And so our stress response creates more issues than it used to, putting us at risk for chronic illness, causing changes to our hearts, and sometimes causing us to turn to unhealthy behaviors. If you ever reached for the tub of ice cream when you're feeling stressed, that is a case in point. That's sometimes my go-to. But some stress is actually necessary for a healthy life. If we didn't feel any stress at all, we wouldn't do much of anything, right? So stress can actually motivate us. If we didn't worry, for example, about getting enough food to eat, we might just hang out all day and not do anything and not, go work at a job or somehow get food to eat. So that's sort of an extreme example, but stress can be our friend. It can help us be productive. Historically, the differences have been noted in the psychological world as eustress or good stress versus distress. And I like a slightly different definition. I like this notion of a challenge response versus a threat response. But either way, the difference between those two is the perception. And so the threat response is when we perceive a threat and our perception is like, oh no, this thing is bad. It's going to harm us. It's outside of my control. I'm scared. I'm worried. I'm anxious. All the things, right? We may feel threatened. We may feel helpless in that threat response. The challenge response is a perception when we're like, oh, here's this potentially threatening thing. And rather than seeing it outside of our control and as something that's harmful, we see it as like a challenge that we can overcome. And rather than feeling fear and worry, we feel excited, we feel motivated, maybe a bit courageous to overcome the challenge. And so people who have this mindset, the challenge mindset, the challenge perception, they have the same sort of stress response in the things in the threat response. So things like our heart rate might increase, we might get sweaty, our breathing might get more shallow. All these things kind of prepare us for change and for action to do something about the perceived threat or challenge. The difference with the challenge response is that our blood vessels actually relax, right? So our blood pressure doesn't increase and our hearts get a healthier, stronger beat. So that's a pretty big difference in terms of how the stress can impact us on a physiological level. And then the other difference is just the way that we're feeling about it, right? With the challenge response, we're like, okay, heck yeah, this is kind of fun. And this is something, it's not always easy to shift from the challenge response to the threat response, But one thing that you can do is kind of think of a time when you have felt excited by a change or something maybe that think of something in your life where you actually felt threatened maybe a little bit initially and you got through it and you're like, actually, that was kind of cool. I'm kind of badass that I was able to get through this thing and be successful with it. So think of how that made you feel in your body and how you felt afterwards. That can be a way to shift. So the next time that you're facing something scary, something stressful, maybe let's got like a big move coming up. It's something that my husband and I have in our near future that I'm shifting my perception on. Big moves, maybe something stressful at work that you're dealing with, and it feels overwhelming. It feels like, how can you even get the team together to mobilize and to solve this problem, like whatever that may be, rather than seeing it as, oh shit, this is out of my control. How do I move past this? Think instead of like, oh, isn't this kind of cool that I get to figure this out? The fear that I may be feeling is just an indication that this thing is important to me and that it can um, give me energy and motivation to take action that's consistent with my values. What a difference those two are. I want to end with a quote of a French daredevil, Philippe Petit, who walked the tightrope between the World Trade Center Twin Towers in New York City in 1974. And he wrote about his secret for coping with that feeling of fear from being up so gosh darn high. What he said was, a clever tool in the arsenal to destroy fear. If a nightmare taps you on the shoulder, do not turn around immediately expecting to be scared. Pause and expect more. Exaggerate. Be ready to be very afraid, to scream in terror. The more delirious your expectation, the safer you will be when you see the reality is much less horrifying than what you had envisioned. Now turn around. See, it was not that bad. And you're already smiling. We'll end on that note and hope that you have a happy Friday, happy weekend, get out and do something fun. Maybe challenge yourself in some way to sort of practice what that challenge response feels like. Take care. Bye now.